21 million. 21 million is a lot of money. If we got rid of some of the stuff, we wouldn't have that. Obviously, I'm not sure if Bledden's on this, but would like to speak to him on that one. So all I want is your permission to carry on with something I started in 19, which I feel very passionate about, with maybe a small group of people, not to take too much officers' time away, but to report back to this group, because that's important. You set the asset management up for us to report back, and that's what I'd like to do. So I'm quite happy to take, well, it says RRG, but quite happy to take the leaders' suggestion that we use a small array of officers and go forward. So I'm open to all questions. So yes, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. And Bledden isn't on the call. I've just been told.
Well, it should be. It should be here. It should be here to present the report.
Yeah,
Councillor Mike.
Thank you, Andrew. I do know. I'm not 100% sure now, but I know he was isolating last week. His wife.
He's still poorly with COVID, Chair. He's still poorly with COVID. I've checked in with this morning.
Okay.
Right. Thank you very much, Jane and Mike. Thank you. So that's why Councillor Andrew. Councillor Paul.
I'd like to build on
pop your mic. Thank you.
I'd like to build on what Andrew was saying there, because it seems an incredibly long time since 2019 that the business case for closing this building, Bodlondeb, transferring staff to Coith Pethla and disposing of this building. It seems to me, in present circumstances, having that business case in front of us is absolutely vital, because potentially it could be saving enormous sums of money over the next 2 or 3 years. So I really don't know why that business case hasn't been brought to us with those options if it's been outstanding since 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Charlie, then Gareth, then Anne, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's clear we need to look at new ways of doing things in the current situation. It doesn't mean to say we don't have to do that indefinitely. I entirely agree that we need to do everything we can, Andrew, to try and streamline our assets, and that work is ongoing, but it's about the best way to deliver that. Clearly, we spent a lot of time since 2019 dealing with the pandemic. We've brought in a hybrid working system. That takes time to bed down, but our financial situation absolutely requires that we accelerate any savings that we can make. Andrew, you will remember you worked with me on the Fleece-Ellion working group, which proved really effective. We had the right people around the table. We were able to meet officers and drive that project forward. So I think there are specific things, there are ways we can look to drive this forward. But if we feel as members that that's not working and we're in a slightly better place in a year or two, then obviously we can reconsider. Nothing's final here. It's just how do we get things to move forward at this time. And I absolutely share your passion, Andrew, for this and the need to push it forward. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Charlie. Councillor Gareth.
I'd just like to say, I think Councillor Andrew and Councillor Paul are absolutely right. And it's not just the capital values of these properties, it's actually the ongoing repairs, maintenance and running costs. And the second point is, and I really don't know whether it's within our remit or the council's remit, but, you know, how many buildings are actually owned by town councils and what are the costs of actually maintaining those buildings? And is there an opportunity for some of those functions to be brought into, you know, they're separate, but they're actually housed at Conwy Council buildings, if that's appropriate. So again, we're not actually spending, you know, we've got the right stock, we've got the right buildings, and we're actually minimising the maintenance.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Really good points there. Councillor Anne is next.
Thanks, Chair. Andrew, I think if I remember rightly, I proposed this back in the day and you sort of seconded it. And I think we were both 2 or 3 years ago really passionate about this was something we had to really get some energy behind and some focus behind. You're right, we started, but really I think presumably most of it down to COVID, etc. I think it just sort of went on the back burner. I think now is absolutely the time that we need to bring that focus back, and I'm really keen that there's strong democratic sort of drive behind it. Whether we have the current task and finish group, obviously I haven't seen minutes, I don't know who's on it. I presume I'm not on it since I'm not aware, but I'm really passionate that we drive this. And I think given the current climate, downsizing our estate, optimizing our estate, looking at how we get income, etc., is really, really important. So I don't think we can let this go. And I wouldn't like this just to be a chat with one person with another. I think there needs to be some sort of democratic group who are perhaps equally passionate about this, who want to drive it forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. If you'd like to come in there before we go to Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, in respect to Councillor Gareth's point, I guess it's a rather complicated situation with regard to town and community council buildings. I do know there's work going on in order to look at the ones which are involved with the council itself, and that will be an ongoing thing. But yeah, it is rather, because you also have a lot of them subject to trusts and so on. So it is a rather complicated situation. But those we have some influence on. There is a job of work going on at the moment in terms of looking at them. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Reen. Councillor Sean.
Thank you. I'd just like to, yes, I agree that, going forward, we need to make a move on this. But I'd also, an observation, could I possibly be, as the local member, included on any discussions in Midlondon? Because it was compulsory purchase by the council for the people. There's an act on it, and it's a World Heritage centre, then I do think it's extremely important we be really, really careful of what replaces Midlondon if we leave it. So I would like to be included in any discussions on it, because since I've been on the council, I have heard various rumours and discussions that have gone ahead in the council that I haven't been party to or aware of. And I think it's extremely important that the local members get included in anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sean. Yes, I totally agree with that. You should be consulted, yes. We'll now go to Councillor Dilwyn's next. You're on mute, Councillor Dilwyn.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd also like to support Andrew, and can I also suggest that there's an element of urgency on this to get the work done, and I'm not. I can sympathise with where Andrew's been chairing this, and I know, knowing Andrew, he'd have done everything he could in the time, but maybe would it be useful if Andrew agrees that we try and put a time scale to this to get a report back to this committee, and I also know that some work was done on assets management, some work, basic work in the administration before last, during which time Coed Pella was built and opened. Yes, I just want to support Andrew on what he's trying to do here and agree with most of what's been said since as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dilwyn. Councillor Nigel, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I just first want to say I'm really surprised that Bledding's not here. Okay, he might have had COVID last week. I get that.
He's poorly. He's poorly. Councillor Nigel.
Yeah.
Hasn't got a voice at the moment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Well, I fully support Andrew. Clearly, this asset management task and finish group has not finished its work in the financial landscape that we find ourselves in at this present time. I think it's more important than ever that we keep this going. So I fully support Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councillor Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'll just sort of wrap this up a little bit. I'll say thank you to Sean. I think every member will be included. Charlotte, it won't be just the ward members. It'll be a very important thing to go forwards, obviously. Councillor Anne, yes, you were right. You did start it, and we did start it in 2019, Councillor Anne. There was 4 meetings held between. We did really well. We accelerated really quickly in 2019. Unfortunately, COVID took over 2020, as we know. I'm a bit. There was a report that Charlie knows about, but Bledden wrote a report going through the options of how to go forwards, and I wrote a report going back and going through all the terms of reference and realised that a lot of it we hadn't met, again, because of the COVID thing. So, again, I would just like at this point and take Dilwyn's idea on board is maybe come back and report to you again after having a meeting and then looking at partners that maybe want to join a small committee to drive these forwards. And then we'll see how we get on from there. So I think just let's get in in the new year and find a direction, bring it back to you, and then with everybody's agreement, and we maybe carry on, or maybe take it into another task and finish group. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Andrew. And in the chamber now, we've got Amanda, then Councillor Mike. Thank you.
Sorry, Mike.
No, it's all right.
I got first dibs.
That's
Just to reference really the fact that next week, at your next meeting, I'll be bringing forward the medium-term financial plan, and within that, effectively, I set out a number of strategic areas that I think we need to look at to consider our financial position going forward, and obviously consideration of our footprint of our asset base is critical to that, both in terms of making sure that we consider whether we have surplus assets and the need to get rid of those if we do have them, and also the potential need to consolidate our footprint in certain town centres. For instance, there might be town centres where we have 3 or 4 or 5 different locations, and do we in fact need to bring some of those together to deliver services more effectively, but also on a lower cost base. So just really wanted to highlight to the committee that the need for strategically look at our asset base is set out in principle in the strategy. Thank you.
Excellent. That's really helpful, Amanda. Thank you. Councillor Mike, then Councillor Paul.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. The sort of issue for me at the moment is we've said here, and we've just said it earlier about officer time and how precious it is. I think the situation, as described by Amanda just now, will need our officers obviously to pay a lot of attention to these. And my concern is that if we have certain projects that we will be discussing assets in those projects, and my concern is a duplication, and if we're going to go away and discuss them everywhere. So whether there's a filter system that we can filter, for example, Sean, I think you've been invited to a meeting with Blevin and Emily and myself. I don't know if that's come through yet, but there's certainly an email on its way to you. It might be put off this week now because of how poorly Blevin is. But I just don't want the duplication. If we're going to talk about asset management or an asset in a task and finish group, and then 2 days later go to a project board and discuss the same asset. So if we could do some sort of filtration around that, I'm happy to proceed.
Thank you, Councillor Mike. I take on board Councillor Anne's and Sean's points about democracy. It has to be inclusive of but yeah, absolutely. So next I've got Councillor Chris Hughes on Zoom, then Councillor Paul in the chamber.
Thanks, Chair. I was going to touch on the same point that Councillor Mike has just made in terms of asset management, because I'm conscious of the fact that we have a green programme board still, I believe, which has been looking at a number of our assets in terms of trying to make them more efficient and more energy efficient in particular. So I too was concerned that we were about duplication, but equally was also concerned that these sort of things need to be happening, because where we do decide we're keeping buildings, where we decide we're disposing of them, then that's will obviously be made. There'll be a business case around that. But in terms of those buildings that we are retaining, I think that whilst we've gone a long way to addressing some of the problems, there's still quite a long way to go in terms of making our buildings more energy efficient and more efficient in general. So I would just add that to the point. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. Councillor Paul, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
I wonder if Councillor Mike or Amanda can be much more specific and explicit about Bodlondeb. The reason I asked that question, I am respectful to what Sian said as well, is that if we are going to transfer staff from here to Coedpethra, presumably work is being done on that now. If we're going to close this building up, presumably work is being done on that now. And likewise, if we're looking at how we dispose of Bodlondeb, work is going on now. And I really want to press Councillor Mike or Amanda to reassure me that that sort of work is going on, obviously ensuring it's done efficiently and effectively and not duplicated. But is that work going on now?
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Mike?
Yes.
Thank you.
You know, obviously we have to be sensitive, and we'll have a range of options. So it won't just be about, are we closing a certain building? It will look at what options we have. So, you know, if you just turn around and say, yes, okay, we're going to close a building, let's not forget that we have staff in them buildings, you know, from housekeeping to whatever. So yes, Paul, work is going on. Just quickly, Chair, when I was talking about duplication, I've just picked up some of the Abergele Regeneration Board where we talk about stuff. Affordable housing programme where we talk about surplus buildings and lands within our control. Brickwork site, there's a Conway Civic Hall. We have all these programmes working on assets, and that's where I don't want to. Yeah. So yeah, let's consolidate it and use our officer time to the best we can. We are going to need the time, but yes, there are lots of things going on, Councillor Paul. And when them options are ready, we'll certainly come to, you know, to democracy.
Thank you, Councillor Mike. Councillor Andrew, do you want to make your proposal now then? You're on mute.
Thank you, Chair, for advising me. Mike, you just outlined some projects there that have been on the go for 3 or 4 years. So you know, this is a perfect example. What the asset management was tasked with was, in the terms of reference, was to actually go forwards and identify things and move things forwards. 2019. The Bodlondeb's a great example. 3 years further on, and we're not anywhere there. The consultant, I don't think a consultant's reports have been established yet to actually work out what's the best thing to do to the building and how to to dispose of it, and also the cost savings and so on and so forth. So I'm quite happy to be guided from what Charlie said. Is the task, instead of restarting the task and finish group, meet with asset management and people like Charlie and Emily, and then come to some sort of conclusion. And I'd quite happily bring it back to you, because my task and my duty was to come and report to the Finance and Resources Committee. As you say, Charlie's got a passion for it. I've got a passion for it. A lot of you got a passion for it. But we just need to sort of revisit it and see how we get on. And to do that, I need to speak to Bledden, really, and go forward with that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. I've got Councillor Gromway in the chamber, and then we're moving on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly there's a bit of history to all this, and this task and finish group was set up in 2019, but we have had COVID since then. We have been looking at how we work in the best ability, working remotely or through hybrid, and this chamber has been specially adapted for that process in this current time. We've also had the perfect storm of the financial crash since then. So we are looking at a whole raft of things to economise and to look at making best use of our assets. So I think to start going off in different streams, as Mike has quite rightly said, is going to cause an awful lot of extra work. No, the work will be going on. ERF is very much involved because they actually manage the facilities. We're looking at our percentage of the savings for the budget. So all this is going on at a different level and at a different pace now that we are dealing with completely different circumstances to what we were in 2019.
You might well be doing Bromley, but it's 3 years further on, and we're still not anywhere closer. So my identity on that particular finance and resources task and finish group was to carry it on and to move it on. And you're just telling me now that you're doing something in the background. Well, no, sorry, you're not. You're not doing enough, and we need to make sure we do. We've got huge problems to face, and we've got a lot of maintenance to do. For £21 million worth of back maintenance to do on all our properties. So come on, let's get a grip of it. Let's get a small committee going, and let's report back to you and then see how we get on from there on. Because frankly, the two cabinet members, no, thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Anne, last word, and then we're moving
Yeah,
on.
I just want to second Andrew's proposal. I think the conversation today demonstrates that we need a hierarchical sort of strategic oversight of this, because there's a lot of work going on in that dangerous word of silos, and I think we just need to catch a grip of it and actually sort of give it some real sort of energy. So I second your proposal, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anne. Yeah. Okay, well, we've had a proposer, we've had a seconder. Would members like to show 4, 2, 3? No, 3 in the chamber. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. Yes. Okay, and anyone against? No. Okay, that's carried. Well, thank you very much, members. That was a really useful debate. We know where we're going now with that. We now move on to the financial resilience task and finish group. Amanda, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I guess just to set context, this group was set up prior to my starting. I believe it only met once, and I haven't been able to identify any terms of reference for the group. But anyway, putting that aside, I guess what it is hoped is obviously we've set up now a number of budget working groups to consider the budget in detail. A number of members from this committee are on those working groups, and therefore, I guess the hope is, or the suggestion is, that we can effectively that the budget working groups become these task and finish group, if you know what I mean, so that we don't need a separate task and finish group and the budget working groups, but effectively we just have the one set of groups, the group that takes this work forward. Obviously, that budget working group is meeting a number of times in the coming weeks in relation to this revenue budget, and in due course I'll be arranging stuff equally around capital, and obviously then if agreed, though, that group can then continue to meet at periodic times in relation to dealing with the medium term sort of financial position. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Has anyone got any comments on this? Councillor Anne.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Amanda. I think if you're proposing that the budget groups are not the normal self-destruct once we've got the next year's budget sort of balanced and agreed by full council, I would be happy to support that. But if that's not what you're proposing, I think I'd be just slightly a bit more cautious, really. I don't think this is a one-off exercise for the next year. I think, Conway, as we know, has been in the bargain basement of the league table in terms of financial resilience, and of course it's only in times like this where relying on a wing and a prayer and limited financial resilience is really a catastrophic position to be in. So I think we need something that is going beyond the normal term of budget groups. But if you're saying you see this as being not stopping in sort of leading up to March, I'd be happy to support that, Amanda, because we want to rationalise what democracy does and make sure that we do smart working as well. So if it's a budget group that doesn't fall in sort of March 2023, I'd be happy to support that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anne. Amanda.
Yeah, Councillor, I totally agree with you. I don't believe we can afford for it to be a group that falls once we've set the budget. I think as soon as we've set the budget, we immediately need to be moving on to consideration of how we look forward to the future years. And as I say, there's a whole range of strategic areas I think we need to look at in terms of that. So yeah, absolutely don't intend for it to fall. Obviously, the pace of it might lull slightly and pick up again later on, but certainly, yeah, it would be a continuation. Thank you.
I'll propose that then, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Anne. Have we got a seconder? Oh, Councillor Gareth, you. Oh, a separate, right, okay. Well, do you want to do that first? Then we'll ask for a seconder for Councillor Anne's proposal.
What I was going to say is that the key thing for me here is that we're addressing a point brought up in an audit report. So therefore, as long as we've got a mechanism to show that we've taken the audit report seriously and we're trying to do something about it, you know, that's the key things that we need out of this.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Have we a seconder for Councillor Anne's proposal, please? Councillor Paul? Okay, right. Well, we've had a proposer and a seconder. Would members like to show in favour, please? Nine. Have you got nine? There it is. Yes, 9-4. Have we got anyone against, please? No. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much, members. That's great. We now move on to the play provision task and finish group, and I think we have Bryn with us Bryn Chyland with us to go through this.
Hi, Councillor Anne. I'm also our Councillor Cheryl. It's Owen Connery here as well. Maybe if I could just do a bit of background on it, and then before I call Bryn in, if you wouldn't mind. Good morning, councillors. So this task and finish group was set up in February 2019. In terms of reference, is the group to review current policy and guidelines to determine the adequacy of formal play provision within Conwy County. I suppose there was two sections involved in this. There was leisure development, or leisure services, and ERF. I'm speaking, and Bryn will be speaking from the ERF point of view. We would be the chair of this group would be Councillor Harry, and the vice chair of this group would be Councillor Austin. So I'm speaking on behalf of the ERF section of this, and maybe I'll call Bryn in to let you know what we have done working with our colleagues in leisure services. We would feel that we have delivered on what was required within the task and finish group, but obviously it's the chair and the vice chair and democracy that will make that decision. But Bryn, do you want to maybe just come in and maybe highlight the work that was done in relation to the audit of the play provision within the county?
Yes, thank you, Owen. Thank you, Chair. As Owen said, we produced a report with recommendations, which was discussed at the last task and finish group meeting, I think, which was at very early 2021. At that meeting, we failed to get any approval with regard to the recommendations within that report. And it was concluded that we would look at an external report which was produced by an external consultant to look at the provision of play. Well, we were working in COVID came, and we've sort of lost traction since. But touching on the terms of references, what we are doing now moving forward is that we're working more closely with our colleagues in leisure. We're undertaking some key consultation with key groups such as members, community councils, town councils, youth councils, and members of the public who basically feed into the process of what the future of play would look like in terms of when there's need for intervention for maintenance at each site in Conway. And then that's fed back into the design and development of the playground in question.
That's that's great. Thank you very much indeed for that. Sally's going to stand in for Councillor Harry this morning and read out his comments before we move on.
Yeah, so Councillor Harry sent us his notes, so I'll just read them out for you. I was previously the deputy chair of this task and finish group. The chair, Councillor Thomas Jones, stood down at the 2022 local election. The task and finish group was established as a tourism tax had been identified. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Ignore me. He sent us two. Yeah, sorry, this is the one. I previously chaired this task and finish group, which was established by the Finance Scrutiny at its meeting on the 3rd of September 2018, when considering a report on playground infrastructure. The report highlighted that playground infrastructure was deteriorating more rapidly than current resources allowed it to be maintained or replaced, which was evidenced by the increasing number of findings identified in the report. The report presented options to ensure that play equipment provision within Conway remained safe. Members may recall that there was an amount of media coverage about the playground equipment being isolated for prolonged periods, awaiting repairs, and that some members highlighted that they'd been contacted by local residents. The Task and Finish group considered a wide range of issues relating to funding, the ongoing maintenance of playground equipment, and the sort of equipment that should be provided. The group never made a recommendation and last met on 2nd of February 21. Since being established, Conway significantly increased the playground maintenance capital budget, and whilst this budget never reached the full amount that ERF expected was required to fund steady state maintenance of the council playgrounds, many of the problems initially identified were resolved. My initial thoughts are that this Task and Finish group should be wound up. However, I am conscious that members of the group were interested in exploring wider issues relating to the kind of play equipment provided. If there's still appetite to explore these wider issues, I would suggest that the group is reconstituted and transferred to either the Economy in Place or Social Care and Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you very much for that, for Councillor Harry's views. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, obviously in the present financial circumstances, we probably aren't going to make much progress on playgrounds going forward, but I think we should at least be acknowledging this is something of significance to many residents. I know during the election campaign, it's one of the things that people bent my ear about consistently. The state of the playground in Mize Canal, the surplus water and boggy nature of the playground on Pentramour Park, the maintenance of which is not in my ward, but the maintenance of Park Galley and the play equipment there, and the surface particularly there, and also children, young people and some adults in Abergele for some time have been campaigning for a pump cycling park, which is on the agenda now for the town council. But these are significant issues, and as I know everybody says, everything the council does is important to somebody, but the playgrounds in relation to children and young people is very important. I'm very conscious of the impact of the pandemic on people's well-being, and we've certainly got facilities in Abergele that cannot be used, particularly the Pentramour Park after heavy rain. And
so do you want to make a proposal, Councillor Paul?
Well, I think in terms of, I'm not going to recommend that the Task and Finish group continues, because I appreciate what people are saying about tying up resources, but I think what we need to formally acknowledge is it is still a big issue for this council, and I accept we probably can't do anything about it in the short term, but it certainly shouldn't not be acknowledged here today.
Yes, thank you very much. Very important to our children and young people. We've got Councillor Anne and Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, I just second what Councillor Paul has proposed. I think listening to the comments from Harry, I think the original Task and Finish group was just because there was an inordinate amount of backlog maintenance, and I think quite a chunk of that has been delivered. I think perhaps given the constraints that we're under, I think, you know, this is less of a priority than it was. It's still a priority, but less of a priority. And indeed that probably we can stand down as this group, and it really just becomes an operational matter that we, in the normal way, keep our eye on and receive reports about it as indeed is appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Anne. So you seconded. Councillor Gareth, and then go to the vote.
I was just going to say that, you know, by very nature, a lot of our play areas are very old fashioned. And I think the current thinking on play areas has very much moved forward and is focused on, rather than mechanical equipment, which needs maintenance and regular reviews, is more focused on natural play areas, which has that knock-on effect of that you don't have that repairs and maintenance and having to review it as much. So possibly we need a change of thought as to the sort of play areas we want to provide our children and young people, rather than focusing on the high maintenance mechanical stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gareth. I'm sure those of us old enough will always remember you had your best fun playing in streams and fields and things like that, but that's someone old. So there we go. Have we got any more? Councillor Nigel next and Councillor Tristan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I sort of agree with what's just been said, and also what Councillor Harry put in his notes, that we ought to look at the type of play schemes. I think in the past we've been, I don't know, maybe favouring one supplier and therefore limiting the style and types of schemes that we can introduce locally. But obviously it all comes down to funding, and hopefully that funding will come via the town councils at this present financial climate that we find ourselves in at county level.
Thanks, Councillor Nigel. Councillor Tristan.
Diolch yn fawr, Madam Cadeirydd. Dwi'n meddwl bod yna gyfle yn fan hyn gyda pharciau chwaraeon a gyda'r holl waith sydd eisiau wneud arnyn nhw, bod yna gyfle yn fan hyn i'r cynghorau cymuned, os oes y gyfle, iddyn nhw gymryd nhw drosodd. Enghraifft yn Wardi yn Clwt, yn Llansannan, a hefyd yn Llansannan, mae'r parciau ar offer chwarae mewn cyflwr echrydus, ydy y gwir, i'r fath raddau bod nhw bellach wedi rhoi pethau atal i blant fynd arnyn nhw. Ond mae yna awydd mawr ymhlith Cyngor Cymuned Llansannan i gymryd rhain drosodd, i gymryd cyfrifoldeb, ac hefyd wrth sôn ac ymdrin ar cwestiwn blaenorol oedd yn blaenorol ar yr agenda. Enghraifft, mae'r pafiliwn yn Llansannan, pafiliwn pêl-droed, yn eiddo'r Cyngor Sir. Eto mae yna awydd gan y Cyngor Cymuned i gymryd hwnna drosodd, i gymryd gofal, i gymryd y les, ac felly lle mae yna gyfle, dwi'n meddwl bod y Cyngor bod yna gyfle i'r Cyngor Sir basio hein ymlaen yr asedau yma i'r cynghorau cymuned, wedyn yn arbed pres ac yn arbed y costau sydd. Mae yna waith dybryd gwario ar y pafiliwn yn Llansannan, fel mae'r Cyngor Cymuned yn fodlon ymgymryd ar gwaith. Wedyn, os oes y gyfle gen y Cyngor Sir, dwi'n meddwl dyle bod yna awydd a chymryd hynny i ystyriaeth. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Councillor Tristan. Yes, that's all I'm sure going to go forward into when we look at everything in these budgets. Last speaker is Councillor Chris.
Thanks, Chair. 2 points. I accept what Councillor Tristan said in terms of small town and community councils, but where we're talking about large town councils, it's somewhat different, particularly when you have to consider that you have to carry out annual risk assessments, and there's the insurance costs. Instead of a single play area costing a few thousand, you're running into the tens of thousands of pounds for some of our larger towns who simply can't afford to take on these the parks in the Colwyn Bay, for example. We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 parks, 10 risk assessments, 10 insurance, 10, you know, it's a huge amount of money and a huge undertaking, and was looked at a couple of years ago by the town council, and was decided we couldn't agree to 30% increases in our precept to take on board the, you know, because it doesn't save money, it just passes the buck from one body to another. So I think that's you know, a point that we need to reflect on. The other point that I wanted to raise is that Councillor Gareth made the point about natural play areas, but natural play areas don't suit everyone. I have a son with learning difficulties. You stick him in the middle of a natural play area or an open space, and he'll just sit there wondering what to do. You've got to give him something to do. And so it's not a case of, it's a case of horses for courses. Not everybody will be able to take advantage of just a plain open space or even trees to climb. My son's dyspraxic amongst a number of his concerns. And I'm just highlighting that because I think we need to reflect on the fact that every individual child is different. Every child learns differently. Every child plays differently. And we need to reflect on that when we carry out these assessments. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. Yes, I'm sure we're all aware of the differing needs of all our children. Okay, so that's the end of the comments. We've had a proposal from Councillor Paul. We've had a second from Councillor Anne. Would you like to show, please, members? 1, 2. Councillor Stephen, are you voting or you're not? Okay. 1, 2 in the chamber. And who have we got? How many? So 10. Okay, thank you. And anyone against, please? Councillor Stephen. Okay, thank you very much. So that's carried. We now move on to the tourism task and finish group, which Jane is going to just talk us through briefly, and then Sally's going to give Councillor Harry's comments. So Jane, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. At the point when this was set up, Wales had been given the legislative capability to have a tourism tax, but nothing had been actioned in terms of whether the Welsh Government were looking to progress that. So members at that time were wanting this group to explore whether Conway should be lobbying Welsh Government to bring forward a tourism tax. Clearly, since that time, quite a lot has changed. Welsh Government are actively pursuing this. They've been undertaking a very thorough consultation process. Conway Council officers, myself, Sue Plum from Revs and Benz, and Ellen Edwards in Economic Development have been involved in very frequent fortnightly workshops exploring the implications. Other colleagues have been involved, and the portfolio holder in in-person workshops recently. So the landscape has changed completely and has kind of gone ahead really of the function of the task and finish group that we have. So I think the view was that the current task and finish group should probably be stood down, and then depending on what the outcome of the consultation is and what the proposal is for a tourism tax within Wales, perhaps at that point a new group or a separate group should be established to consider what the opportunity might be for Conway and the implications for rollout, etc., etc. But it would need a different remit at that point.
Thank you very much indeed, Jane. I've got councillors Anne and Nigel, and then do you want to read to? We can do, if we do Councillor Harry's comments first and then go to the debate, that would be great. Thanks, Sally.
Okay. I was previously the deputy chair of this task and finish group. The chair, Councillor Thomas Jones, stood down at the 2022 local election. The group was established as a tourism tax had been identified as an option to generate income for Conway County Borough Council. The Welsh Government had indicated that they would be undertaking a call for evidence on a tourism tax, and I understand that they suggested that they would be open to receiving policy proposals from Conway County Borough Council to inform their thinking. The group met once on the 23rd of January 2020 and was paused during the COVID-19 pandemic. I believe that the Welsh Government have since carried out significant policy development work on a tourism tax, identifying that it will be a levy on overnight visitor stays. The Welsh Government are currently consulting on the details of how the levy will be implemented. I feel that the Task and Finish Group's main objective to influence Welsh Government policy around a tourism tax has been largely overtaken by events. I would suggest that this Task and Finish Group is wound up, as the implementation of a levy on overnight visitor stays is a current issue that will involve the Council. I would encourage the Cabinet to consider setting up a working group similar to the Affordable Housing Council Tax Premiums Group if there is an appetite from Scrutiny members to remain involved. I believe that a working group would be more appropriate vehicle for scrutiny members to engage with this issue than a task and finish group.
Thank you very much indeed, Sally. We'll now go to councillors Anne and then Nigel. Councillor Anne.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I agree completely with what Jane has suggested, and partly with Harry. I think the remit really has now been overtaken by events, and I would suggest, again, given the current climate and what's happening, I think we should stand this group down. And if there is a need in the future, we can establish a different group with a different remit. Thanks, Chair.
Is that your proposal, Councillor Anne? Yeah. Thank you very much. Councillor Nigel.
Yes, clearly, as Councillor Anne has said, and Jane, of course, things have moved on. So I fully support Anne's proposal and quite happy to second it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nigel. Any other speakers, thoughts? Anybody? No? Okay, in that case, we've had a proposer and a seconder. Would you like to show in favour of that, please, members? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13. That's 13, 4. Have we got anybody against, please? Councillor Dilwyn, are you waving your hand, or you're on mute? No. Okay. All right. Well, that's carried then. Thank you very much indeed, members. Well, that's taken slightly longer than we thought it was going to, so no pressure, Councillor Mike and Amanda. But we now gone to item 10A, Revenue Budget 22-23, the Q2 monitoring report, pages 52 to 70. Councillor Mike is going to introduce it, and Amanda is here for any questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. As you say, this is the Q2 monitoring report. And it's indicating that we are facing budgetary pressures in this financial year of just over £9.5 million. And I think we're all aware at this stage now of why we're in the position we are, but I will remind us it's a result of significant increase in pay and price inflationary pressures. And inflation, for example, last week I think it hit a 41-year high at 11.1%. We also have increased demands on services, particularly in relation to looked after children and homelessness. Rising costs of fuel, energy are also placing pressures on our budget. I want to point out, it's worth noting that none of these pressures are within Conway's control and quite frankly are highly volatile at this present time. Consequently, at the end of October, Amanda, to my right, Chief Financial Officer, Strategic Director for Finance and Resources, instructed budget holders to consider a range of measures to contain the spend within this year. And I presented this to Cabinet and it was endorsed on the 8th of November. I would like to point out that if we had FROSC on Monday the 7th, we would have been discussing that with yourselves. And I'm aware that the leader went then to chairs and vice chairs to explain what the situation was. So it's unfortunate, I think, due to the agenda that FROSC was postponed on the 7th, I believe. It's important that members appreciate that this will impact on provision for the remainder of the year. However, I want to highlight that essential services will continue. That's the introduction, Chair. It's quite grim for this year, looks worse for next year, and I'll hand over to Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mike.
Just to clarify firstly, just to say that we've skipped the capital programme report, so we'll go back to that afterwards, moving to revenue particularly then. Yeah, so as Councillor Mike has set out, this report effectively assesses our financial position in year after the second quarter outturn. Services are now estimating overspends of 5.8 million, and they are largely as a result of pressures around homelessness and looked after children, as well as school transport in particular. They're the three very large areas within that projected overspend. We've also, since the last committee, since the last report, the first quarter report, the detail around the pay awards has been confirmed. So effectively, the national employers have offered and pay terms have been accepted, both for NJC staff and just last week for teachers. So the figures or the financial implications of that are set out in Table 1. Along with the other budgetary pressures, and those costings are based on the agreed pay awards. So they're now confirmed. So effectively, as Councillor Mike says, we're looking like we've got an overspend of around £9.5 to £10 million in year. Without us doing any remedial action to try and contain that. I just want to draw attention, the report does draw attention in Table 2 to our reserves and balances. It's been discussed already today, but we started the year in a healthy position, I guess, or much significantly healthier position than we had a couple of years ago in terms of reserves and balances. And obviously, when the budget was set, we were aware there were still some risks around the potential for further pay awards, the potential for loss of hardship monies, ongoing costs to do with COVID, etc. And we did make, the council did make a number of earmarked reserves as a result of that. But since the first quarter outturn, the landscape has changed significantly, both in terms of our overspend projection has worsened, but also, and more importantly, the funding landscape externally has changed significantly. I think back in July, August, I guess there was an expectation and an assumption that surely additional funding would come to cover these high pressures and increasing pressures. It's evident, however, that that may not be the case. Although last week's budget did provide some glimmer of possible additional funding, but clearly it's not going to be anywhere near to meet the resource shortfall potentially that we have, and therefore the action was taken, as Councillor Mike's already indicated, to ask services to pause and slow activity to try and reduce the in-year overspend from 10 million downwards. Anything it can come down will protect our reserves and balances and give us a little bit more flexibility and resilience in terms of our ability to set next year's budget. I was of the view, as your Chief Financial Officer, that it would be extremely folly to ignore the in-year position and just worry about next year's position. We clearly needed to do something about the in-year position as well in order to help us and alleviate our position in terms of next year. So just moving to next year, in Table 3, I set out a potential resource shortfall. I'll confirm that this still has a lot of estimates or guesstimates, if you want to call them that, within it. We've not yet gone through our business planning process, so I'm still waiting for services to submit their final business cases in terms of the unavoidable pressures for next year's budget. But to the extent that I have a feel for what they're going to be, this table sets those out. You'll be aware, obviously, we reported back in September that at that point possibly we were heading for an £18.5 million resource shortfall at that point in time. Events have moved on significantly since then, and unfortunately that's now more in the region of 30 million, and that's resulting from some very distinct reasons. So the inflation on energy and the expectations around that, and I guess the lack of assurance from government around caps into the longer term is causing one very significant pressure, as is obviously the implication as a result of the changing and increasing interest rate increases. Our pressures to do with looked after children, our pressures around care fees has gone up, albeit that's still subject to democratic decision. So we are now looking potentially like we are facing around a 30 million shortfall next year. As I say, that still has uncertainty in it and risks in it. The business cases that are coming forward, I should have better knowledge of over the next couple of weeks. The other big unknown at the moment is obviously the settlement, and there are two things within that I want to draw your attention to. One is the impact of census data. So Conwy has had the latest census data shows that Conwy as a county has had a very small decrease in its population. However, while we've had a small decrease, Wales as a whole has had an increase of 1.9%. In terms of the way the funding is distributed from Welsh Government, the overall pot is the same, but it's then divvied up, with population being a very big driver of that. Because our population has fallen compared to the rest of local authorities in Wales, it will mean that will impact negatively on our settlement. The extent to which that will impact negatively, I don't know yet, and neither do I know whether Welsh Government will seek to dampen the effect of that over 1 or 2 years or more. I don't know. So that's going to not help us when it comes through. But then on the positive, obviously, we know from the budget settlement last week, or the autumn statement, that the Chancellor's decisions in the autumn statement pass a further £1.2 billion to Wales through the Barnett consequentials. That, however, is spread over 2 years, and it is also the total value of the consequentials to meet the implications to do with business rates, health, as well as education and social care, as referenced by the Chancellor. So my understanding is that the 1.2 billion will be split roughly 50-50, but actually a little bit more in the first year and a little bit less in the second year, but roughly 50-50. But as I say, to what extent the Welsh Government then choose to distribute an element of that to local authorities is unknown at this stage. We get the settlement on the 14th of December, and obviously at that point we'll have a much clearer view about where we are in terms of our position for next year. So effectively, as I say, we're looking to contain the current year overspend as much as we can in order to provide us more resilience to face that significant financial challenge that we have next year. And that's effectively what the reports are confirming. I have also, just in paragraphs 3.20 onwards, just given a quick update for members around the funding around the Ukraine scheme. You'll be aware that we are receiving some additional funding from UK government through Welsh Government. It's only one-off funding as far as we're aware at this stage, and the funding is both for support of the individuals, but also support for children through the education system as well. In terms of what that funding position looks like for us, Table 4 sets that out. At this stage, as at the end of the year, I anticipate potentially that we will still have around £700,000 in reserve as a result of that anticipated income. To the extent that there is any surplus income, it's obviously one-off money, but obviously we could use that to help support costs around homelessness, because I suspect inevitably some of the Ukrainian refugees may well land in homelessness positions in time. But also just to bear in mind that we have a team of people in place who are supporting the Ukrainians, and that team is costing £27,000 a month. So to the extent we want that team to continue beyond or want or need that team to continue beyond the funding stream, then obviously we'll need to continue to earmark that spare money to fund that team for a period of time into the future. So thank you. Cheers.
Thank you very much indeed, Amanda, for that thorough run through. Before we go to the debate, just to go back to Councillor Mike, your comments about the FROSC on the 7th of November being cancelled. We did bow to officers' well-being and workload to cancel that, and that's why that was. We heeded what was being said. So thank you. Thanks. Okay, we've got in the room, got councillors Charlie, then Gareth, then Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought it'd be useful to give members an update of a meeting that was held this morning with Welsh Local Government Association, the 22 leaders and the Rebecca Evans Finance and Local Government Minister. As Amanda has pointed out, 1.2 million is over 2 years. There's still a bit of work to be done to actually clarify what exactly that means in terms of consequentials for local government. An area of confusion is the NNDR rate relief. They've talked about extending relief for hospitality businesses to see them through the winter. It's estimated maybe up to 45% of that money will be required to fund those schemes. So again, that has real consequences for us. There's that phrase, a problem shared is a problem halved. You know, every local authority is in exactly the same situation, and it wasn't halved. The enormity of it and the situation we're facing was put time and time again by every leader. You know, we're really passionate about what we do, and we want to make sure that every penny that we can comes our way, because we're in such a dangerous situation in this year. There were a couple of other specific asks. As we've been saying here today to members, we have to kind of rethink what we can do in terms of our capacity and officer space. So there was, again, a very clear ask to Welsh Government to look at some of their policies that they're bringing forward, 20 miles per hour, CJCs in particular, in terms of the funding costs and the officer time, that whether we would have to pause those for a little bit. People will have their own opinions whether they're good ideas or not, but actually, given the situation we're in, do we just focus on the really critical things that we have to do? At the time, we wanted more sort of discussion about the use of reserves, because there's a lot of political tax sometimes from Senate members about why not you use reserves, a lack of understanding that they are earmarked for certain projects, which I don't think is very helpful. And thirdly, the attitude of regulators. It was made again the point that we're being asked to sort of do things maybe not as well as we would like to do, but we're still being judged on standards from maybe 10 years ago. I think we see that with the library report, where it's still demanding levels of staffing that are quite frankly unsustainable last year, never mind the situation we're in. So that there was a really unanimous will to really fight the corner for local government. I don't mind making tough decisions, but we're going to be asked to make some terrible decisions, which will cost us more money in the long time. I particularly raised our schools. We've got 10% higher absentee rates. A lot of that's due to mental health issues and stress. It's got a Gogarth, met the head there last Tuesday. Some of the support packages they're offering those children are borderline. If they can't support them anymore, then they become children looked after. We know how expensive out of county placements are. So some of these things are not just bad; they're awful, and they will cause us huge problems. Not in the long term, in the short to medium term. So there needs to be a real recognition of that these are existential, it's easy for me to say, dangers to the services that we can provide. And unless there is adequate support this year, you know, we're not going to get through the next couple of years. So we'll continue to bang that drum, but I just thought it'd be useful to give members a proper up-to-date of where we're up from a political leadership point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Charlie. We'll now go on to Councillor Gareth, please.
Thank you. I've got 3 points that I want to cover. Shall I cover them all off?
Yes, please.
In one go? Okay. The first one is, if I remember rightly, a few meetings ago, we voted to transfer £1 million out of the homeless and looked after children out of their budget. Are we going to be transferring that back in to meet that costs now? The second point is, would it be handy for us as councillors if there was a list or an appendix of all the non-performing assets in the council, such as, you know, any redundant buildings, the site down in Mochtra, so that we could see the costs all associated with that, and that could actually touches back to what we were talking on earlier. That would then let us focus on the drivers as to what needed to really be actioned on and where we needed to focus on, and also give a feel as to those ongoing costs associated with that, with the rents and the maintenance and all the other bits and pieces. And my third point is just a question of, you know, we're faced with this unprecedented issue as far as revenues are concerned. Are we actually looking at some really radical solutions? Because as far as I can see, our constituents, they see the frontline services that need to be protected. As Councillor Charlie said, you know, it's the schools, and that's what they're really focused on. Are they really that fussed as to where those back office functions come from? You know, do we need to look at possibly merging the back office, you know, just pluck it out of the education departments together with another councils, so that, you know, if you get those economies of scales and levels of expertise there? You know, are we at that stage where we have to look at really, really radical, groundbreaking things to do to actually protect those frontline services? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. You raised some, yes, some really interesting points. Amanda, do you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Yeah, just in terms of the homelessness position. So just to recall, you, as you say, the committee supported a environment of the budget into balances, and the reason was because effectively in last year we prepaid £1 million of advance payments. So effectively it was a correction of the budget because in theory it wasn't needed because we'd prepaid it. However, the reality of the situation is that the demand for homelessness has continued to rise at pace through the year, and it does now again look like that section is going to be overspent by about £1 million. So to the extent that at the end of the year that is an overspent position, then that effectively will have to get funded back from balances. In terms of the list of non-performing assets, certainly I think I'm certainly anticipating and expecting to find that when some of the budget reduction proposals come through from services, that will definitely therefore be including some suggestions around the list of non-performing assets and looking at where we can get rid of empty buildings, surplus assets, etc. But certainly I think we have started looking. I appreciate it's not in this domain, but we have started looking at things around all the different building costs for all the buildings we've got, to try and scrutinize and question why we've got some of them, what we need to do with them, etc., to try and drive, as you say, some of that sort of thinking. And then your final point, I think at the end of the day we do have to move into much more radical thinking and discussion around the way we deliver and provide our services than we have historically because of the financial situation. I think, whilst I personally don't necessarily, for argument's sake, think that there's huge gains to be had from amalgamating back office services, I think nonetheless we clearly need to look at that kind of stuff in order to prove the case or not otherwise. But I think we are, just to reiterate really, that if you take the cost of every service, the total budget of every service, excluding education, social care and ERF, everything else adds to £25 million. So even if you literally cut every single support service in the authority, got rid of the chief exec, got rid of the members, got rid of everything, got rid of all of economy and culture, got rid of all of housing, it would still only be 25 million. So, that really does put the starknesses of the position in place. Clearly, we need to protect our frontline services. Clearly, we need to protect those essential services, statutory duties. But the reality of the situation is those big services are definitely also going to have to contribute to the savings, because we simply will not balance the budget if they don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, for that radical answer. Thank you very much. Lots of nervous members I see, and officers round the table. Yeah. Oh, there we go then. Yuan, would you like to comment on that?
I noticed Amanda didn't suggest that you get rid of the Section 151 officer, but you could.
That may come. Thank you very much for that, Amanda. Councillor Paul next, please, in the chamber.
Yeah, I want to ask a number of specific questions. I just want to put it in context, though. I fully realise we're still in the expectations management game, but I personally think information does need to be in the public domain, and that's my view about everything. Things need to be in the public domain. I respect totally Councillor Mike's point this morning. There are sensitivities in relation to staff. But as a staff member, if I was a staff member and myself, I'd rather know the reality than not know the reality. And I think most staff are in that position. I fully supported the 8th of November cabinet decision because I thought that was inevitable and it's got to be done, and savings have got to be made as quickly as possible in this financial year. After the budget on Thursday, Jeremy Hunt's statement, I spent Friday morning poring through various newspapers to try and fully understand the implications, not just for my constituents, but particularly for local government in Wales. And I wrote quite a lengthy email to Amanda on Friday afternoon after reading those. And I shared that with Councillor Charlie, Councillor Mike, and 2 other specific cabinet members, Councillor Liz and Julie, because it referred to some specific examples which I wanted to highlight. I think the key issue for me is this issue of cuts in services and compulsory redundancies, because that's worrying me, and I expect every councillor, and most of all. And I really think we need to have in the public domain some specific details about what we're doing about that. I know, for example, because a head teacher contacted me, that there was early sending out of the letter in respect of voluntary redundancies to schools. So we sent it out earlier this year than historically, and I just wanted to specifically check whether that was also true in terms of NJ staff, not just in schools, but in the local authority. I think we do need to know what work is being done on compulsory redundancies, because the size of the shortfall is so enormous, as Amanda's just spelled out again this morning. Though there may be some savings within that 25 million that she mentioned, they're not going to be significant enough really to touch the sides. Amanda said to me in her, and she won't mind me repeating this because she's sort of alluded to it already. She said in relation to the budget that we may be in a situation, and she won't mind reading this because it's reality. How the money is distributed is in the hands of Welsh Government, but we will be spread across health and local government, with the bulk, one assumes, heading for health. If, say, local government were to receive another 200 million, and Charlie this morning has indicated to us this may be not likely, then for Conway, that might mean around £6 million. This would therefore reduce the potential 30 million shortfall down to 24 million. So helpful, but clearly a long way from the solution. And in that worst case scenario, even if we were to receive 6,000 in an allocation and additional grants, whether they were grants to education or whatever, we've still got an enormous problem to tackle. Can I just say on this, to show, Amanda wrote this to me at 6 o'clock on Saturday evening. And I think that just shows, I felt guilty. I felt really guilty that I'd written on Friday afternoon. It shows the level of professionalism from our officers, very profound. So we're very lucky. We are very lucky. I think we do need also, as well as the issues about the compulsory redundancies, I think we need to really draw down on the detail, and I know we're going to do this in the budget setting groups, on the estimates that are there to really understand the detail. And Amanda, again, I won't go into the details here, but went into significant detail with me about the children looked after, which is important. But we need to understand what those estimates are, how they're built up. Also with our reserves, we really need to understand, and I know Gareth has raised that again today about the homelessness situation. We really need to understand the detail of the reserves and realistically how much of those reserves we can use. Because if we've got even a better scenario of 24 million, and I'm not persuaded it's going to be as good as that, 24 million, we are going to have to make people redundant and we're going to have to cut services. And I think we just need to get into the public domain that information. I think councillors need to be talking in the workplaces within the council to people, and we need to be talking to our residents about the fine detail of that, and we need to be doing it now and not leaving it throughout the period. The discussions have got to start now. So I'd be grateful if Mike or Amanda can answer some of the detail of that, but I hope that sets the context in which we debate it this morning.
Thank you for that, Councillor Paul. Mike, are you going to start?
Yeah, well, I think some of that detail will come out starting today at 2 o'clock with the budget working groups. I think I'm struggling to say to a member of staff, well, your job's at risk, when I don't really know that it is. And you know, I've been in a position where we were struggling, as I was a chairman of a school governors, and we said we're going to have to make redundancies. And then all of a sudden, and just bear in mind, the 15th of December will make it a little bit more clearer when we get the figures from Welsh Government. Last minute, we said, oh, actually, we've had some extra money, so we don't have to make redundancies. And the atmosphere in that school was awful. And the situation the staff had to go through was unacceptable in my eye. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, conversations are going to have to be made. We will work with our HR department, but we need to understand, and the difficult cuts, there are going to be difficult cuts, but once we understand where they're going to be, and today we can talk to staff and we can talk amongst ourselves and just say, okay, we're going to stop doing that. What will that mean to the head of service? And then that head of service, I should imagine, will say 6 people not working for Conway anymore. And I think that's, once we get them that information, then, you know, that has to go through democracy, because, you know, I'm not going to say, well, we're going to cut 6 staff from such and such, because I should imagine, Chair, you'd want to have a say in that. You know, so there is a process that we have to go through. I understand how frustrating, Paul, that it is, but I don't know at this moment in time, and I'm not going to say to a member of staff, your job's in jeopardy, because I just don't know at this moment in time. But hopefully, as the working groups get going and we get the final settlement, well, it won't be final, but we'll have an idea on the 15th of December what Welsh Government, what that will mean. Pay, we've just paid NJC to staff, so that'll pan out. Hopefully in the next couple of months we'll get a better picture, might be able to tweak the pay rise, and that might bring in some additional funding that we've put aside for it. It might not, and then we'll have the teachers pay, the 5% on that. So Paul, I totally get your frustration. I totally get that we have to be upfront, but we have to be upfront when we know what we've got to say, is my response to that.
Thank you, Councillor Mike. Are you content, Councillor Paul, that response? You can pop your microphone on. Thank you.
I know the situation of staff morale. I absolutely understand it. But I used to be a very active trade unionist. And when I sat down with management over any issue, I wanted them always to be explicit and specific about what the issues were. Because as a trade unionist, you need to know what you're dealing with. And what I'm saying is, we all know in this room that unless there's a miracle, that some staff, whether they're in schools or in the local authority, are going to lose their jobs, not just voluntarily, compulsorily, because the sums just do not add up. Unless there is a complete overestimation of the figures that we've got, which I do not believe, because I think Amanda is highly professional and she's putting the best information to us. That is the reality, and we need to be, both with the trade unions and with staff, open and honest about that. And I would always want us as an employer to be the best possible employer. And the best possible employer, if they have, whether in the private or the public sector, if they have significant changes in the business that they do, the best employers talk to their staff early and keep talking to their staff all the way through the process. And that's what I want to see us as a local authority. I want to see our human resources active in a way that is absolutely professional and commendable, and staff feel they've got our backs, but they're being honest with us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Paul. Amanda, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to confirm, Councillor Paul, and hopefully give you some assurance. We have sent a number of communications out to staff to alert them to the dire financial position that we're in, both in terms of the activity that we're taking this year to stall and pause activity, slow it down, and also the position next year. So whilst I accept we've not yet started talking in more brutal terms, I guess, about redundancies, we are nonetheless laying the ground in terms of the outlook. We also met last week with the trade unions and outlined in detail. I presented that table that's in this report. I presented that to them to set out the reality of the situation and where we're heading. So we are starting, or we have already started and commenced detailed work around trying to make sure we're laying the ground for that situation. We've also, at officer level, we've discussed whether we put out a general call for voluntary severance. We've, I think, taken the view not to do that, and just to explain the logic for that is because actually sometimes you'll get the wrong people volunteering. They'll not be in the right places. Often it will be the over 55s who will actually be very expensive in terms of their package, etc., which makes it not affordable. And actually have taken a view that really we need to go through the exercise with members, obviously, to really work out what our priorities are as an organisation. And obviously then, if certain things have to go, then the staff relating to those things go, as opposed to somebody over here who's volunteered. So just to sort of explain that rationale. HR are also starting work now to look at the practicalities around some of the processes that we would potentially have to put in place, again, to lay the ground. So, you know, whilst I totally understand your concerns and perhaps we haven't been explicit in bringing some of that to you so far, but you know, in the same way that I said earlier, it would be folly for us not to address this year's financial position. It would equally be folly for us not to look to the future and to think about some of the things that we might need to do, and therefore we are starting activity, or have started activity, to lay that ground. So just to assure you.
Thank you very much for that, Amanda. I can't see anyone else on Zoom with any questions, so I've just got a couple if there's no more in the room. The leader touched on the situation at Ysgol Gogarth in terms of looked after children. We have to be very, very careful, and that will be starting this afternoon in our budget groups, that we don't have unintended consequences, as Councillor Charlie was saying. If we can't accommodate our looked after children here, the cost, both in the human cost and the financial cost of doing anything else, will be massive, and we have to be very clear of the consequences when we make any cuts at all. I think that's priority, and I'd like to request that for the other budget working groups, we have the numbers of looked after children and the numbers of homeless families, so we can see in a graph where we're going. That would be really, really helpful, because without those figures we can only speculate. So that's that one. And there was just a quickie, have we had any thoughts about closing the depot in Mochtra and moving all the staff into Coed Petler, given that we have such a large, I was in there the other day and it was like an echo chamber. I mean, I'm sure we could quite easily now accommodate the staff from there. That would make a big saving. I'm sure mothballing, because that building's got to be the most energy inefficient and you know, and disability friendly building that you could possibly have. So that just my comments. Oh, we now see Councillor Anne, a question for, do you want to, sorry, Anne, I'll just take Amanda's response or Mike's response possible, then we'll come to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of your general observation around making sure that we assess the implications and consequences of the overall decisions, I think certainly that's something that's going to have to be very carefully thought about, because clearly, as you say, we don't want to do activity in one place that actually will just pop out with more spend in another place. There is a slight complication just in relation to the schools, in the sense of we have to consider how that works through the funding formula, because we're not in a position through the funding formulas to protect a school compared to other schools, and therefore we'll need to just think about the practicalities of some of that. Just in relation to, while we mentioned looked after children, you know, I think the other thing that we really need to do is you know, we know we've got burgeoning areas of spend. You know, for instance, if you take homelessness, you know, last year members through the budget process put 2.8 million into homelessness, and this year potentially, or sorry, next year potentially, it may well need to be another £1.5 million. So in very short order, you know, we've had to put £4 million plus into homelessness. You know, looked after children again is another area where potentially we're going to have to put £3 million into that next year. What we have started actively doing is looking at where we can direct capital activity to bring forward solutions to those revenue pressures, which will hopefully bear fruit in revenue. So, for instance, you know, part of the pressure with looked after children is the fact we're having to send them often out of county at very high cost. So a lot of work has been accelerated recently to look at trying to bring, you know, solutions in county, which will therefore bring that cost significantly down and bring that pressure down. The same with homelessness. We're looking at a number of options around the potential for us to buy houses as an authority, for obviously to work with the RSLs, for them to do more development, again to try and bring more affordable housing into the equation, and therefore again reduce that homelessness burden. So there's a number of very proactive things that we're already starting to do to try and address some of that revenue activity. However, that requires prioritization of our capital program, which is obviously a different debate, and that'll be discussed in due course as well. And in terms of Mockdridge specifically, again, I'm positive work is being done to bring that to a conclusion as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Amanda. Look forward to the budget working groups. Councillor Anne next. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks, Amanda. I mean, I think your report this morning has obviously stimulated a very acute sort of debate. And I think those of us who are on the budget groups don't underestimate the challenge in terms of what's ahead. There's a bit more detail in some of the services that's already been shared. I mean, I think Councillor Gareth said that we need to be looking at radical solutions. We really do, and that's probably on a scale that we've never seen before. And I think I would agree with Paul. I mean, I think a lot of work has been done on comms, and I think unfortunately our residents are not going to have a say in this, because we voted earlier in the year that we wouldn't take our proposals in terms of reductions, cuts to services to residents. I mean, I presume it's too late to change that decision, but you know, given the scale of change and cuts and shortfalls, you know, that may well be something that, if possible, we should review, since the majority of other councils do actually consult with residents, and we'll be doing, I'm sure, this year again. I mean, I think in terms of any public watching this, I think there are now a number of budget forums, groups that have been already in the diary. The first one is this afternoon. It's a 5-hour meeting, and there's a series of these to really look in detail about where the planning of our services are and where the radical solutions are, in a timely fashion, to be able to implement some sort of changes. So, you know, we're starting to be on the job, and we need to roll our sleeves up. I think the other thing I would just perhaps ask Amanda for a bit of clarification, if I understand it correctly, on page 56 on table 2, where she talks about reserves and balances. I do recall that the chair of the school's budget forum, the head teacher of one of our secondary schools, did actually say that in terms of schools balances, it's out there as 10.7. they would be spent in this year, because 5 million was what was required to be spent in this year to be able to balance the school's budget. And if I remember rightly, there was another 5 million which was attributed to, it was grant funding from Welsh Government, underspend to do catch-up training. And as those of you on the Education Committee are only too aware, and those of us who are school governors are only too aware, the actual extent of catch-up training for in our schools is absolutely, astounding, really, and it's a long-term issue. So I just wondered if there's any clarification in terms of the planned use figure columns and the anticipated at 31st of March for schools balances on the back of Ian Gerard's letter to us. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Councillor Anne. Yeah, apologies actually that I didn't put that planned use in. I haven't got an update beyond the one Ian Gerard provided last time, but as you say, if my memory serves me right, I think there was a suggestion about 5 million of it would be needed to balance various deficit budgets within various schools, and the remainder was I guess money that they'd had from COVID. So yeah, I don't know the detail of what will be used by the end of the year. I would anticipate some of it definitely will be used. Yeah.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Councillor Charlie, I didn't know if you wanted to respond to Councillor Anne about the going out to the citizens again with the comms.
I have to disagree with Anne again. I think it's our job as paid councillors to put these decisions forward. I think given the gravity of the situation, the timing, I would have more sympathy, Anne, if we had a lot more of a run-in rather than the December. I've looked at various ones, Anglesey, Wirral would have done it before, and I don't think it's a meaningful. There are meaningful answers that we can ask from residents, so I will respectfully agree to disagree.
Thank you, Councillor Charlie. And in terms of the budget group starting this afternoon, I presume whoever scheduled those is not football fans. Just my comment on that before we come to Councillor Dilwyn, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Dim ond cwestiwn ys gai. Yn mewn pwyllgor yn ddiweddar, pwyllgor cyllid madwol o, nes i ofyn ac oedd Amanda mo fas o'n syniad da, dasan ni'n cael fel gwybodaeth ar bapur o be di cyllid y wahanol wasanaethau wedi bod yn yr 10 mlynedd dwytha yma. I ni gael gweld paint y doriadau mae bob gwasanaeth wedi gael a beth sydd wedi digwydd yn y gwahanol gwasanaethau, a dwi'n meddwl fwy nag erioed i mi sydd heb bod yma yn y 5 mlynedd dwytha yma, a mae yna lawer iawn rhy fath a fi sydd heb bod, fasa fo o fydd mawr, a jyst meddwl tybed ydy Amanda a'i thîm wedi cael cyfle i baratoi gwybodaeth yma i ni.
Thank you, Councillor Dilwyn.
My apology, Councillor Dilwyn. I have got that information, and I'll make sure it comes forward to you shortly. I'll distribute it after the meeting. Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks.
And our last speaker, Councillor Liz. I think you've got your hand up there. Oh, Councillor Liz has she's disappeared. Oh
no, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, you're here.
Yes, it was just in relation really to the looked after children, and I just want to say I respect members making suggestions and bringing forth ideas, and Councillor Paul, as he shared on Friday, sent out the email. And yes, I am more than happy to answer those questions for him as we go through the budget working group. And I just think it's so vital. We're in a challenging position, and we're all here to help one another. And I think from a looked after children perspective, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Councillor Cheryl, having held the portfolio role for some years, I'm looking forward to making the changes and to bring the services back in house again, and to see what we can achieve. But we can only do this working together. So I'm looking forward to doing this. So thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Liz, and I'm sure the projects we've already got in the pipeline, both in Adol and different things like that, are going to be of great service to our looked after children. Yeah, looking forward to that. Okay, now we haven't got, I can't see anybody else with any questions. So in that case, we go to the recommendations. Could I have a proposer and a seconder for the recommendations, please? Oh, Councillor John, you proposing? Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder, please?
Chair. Sorry to butt in. I mean, the recommendation is asking that scrutiny committee scrutinise the report and make appropriate recommendations to cabinet.
Yes, Reen, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to ask for clarification. Is Councillor John proposing 2.2 and 2.3 as the view of scrutiny?
No, I'm just proposing the recommendation as per chair. So help me, Reen, help me.
Okay. Were there any, I shall ask again then, were there any specific recommendations within the debate we've had that we want to send forward to cabinet from here, or are we just going to go with 2.2 and 2.3? You can.
I think in answer to my question, as Charlie knows, I respectfully disagree with him on the consultation, and I supported Anne when that came up previously. But I am reassured that from what Councillor Mike and Amanda have said, that we are doing the necessary work with our staff in relation to cuts in services and compulsory redundancies. I am accepting of that position, and I'm assuming that particularly cabinet members will be having those discussions also in workplaces, so that people are well informed and that we are open and transparent, and our human resources practice is exemplary in that communication with our staff.
And is that your proposal to?
Well, no, I think,
cabinet, or you
there's
have to
cabinet members
just
here, they've all heard that, and I don't hear any cabinet members disagreeing with me. Everybody's in agreement about doing that, but it needs to be explicitly referenced in this meeting, and we need to have talked about it, which is what we've done.
That's fine. I guess the question is in terms of what we're asking cabinet from here. Now, 2.3 states to note and accept the significant uncertainties underpinning the financial assessment and the potential implications for future years' budgets. So from what we've discussed this morning, I guess we can agree on that. So whether somebody wants to put something forward on that, the other one, 2.2, is to receive and note the latest financial assessment. Again, I guess we can receive and note that here as scrutiny. So I wonder if somebody is willing to put that forward, because I think it does reflect the conversation we've had this morning.
Chair, I am. Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Anne. So that's your proposal. Is that Councillor Nia? Can I see? Are you seconding, Councillor Nia?
Yes, I'm seconding that. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so are we all content then to go to the vote? We've had a proposer and a seconder to go with the record. Sit. Microphone on. Got you.
Are we proposing 2.2 or 2.3 or both? Oh, okay.
Both.
Thanks.
Okay, well, if everybody would like to show in favour. Yes, we have 11 for. Have we got anyone against, please? No, in that case, that's any abstentions? No, in that case, that's carried. Thank you, members. In view of the time, I think we'd best push on as now, and we'll go to item 8B, the revised capital programme 22-23 Q2 monitoring report. That's pages 71 to 96. Councillor Mike and Amanda.
Yeah, I will be quick. So basically, the total capital programme now stands at 144.836 million. This is made up of 107. I won't go into the figure. Just over 107, as set out on the 9th of August 22 cabinet. 9th of August 22 cabinet report. 35, just over 35 million for schemes previously reported, amalgamated into an overall programme. Due to the nature, a larger number of the schemes will be profiled over one financial year, and as a result, the programme is split between the 22-23 programme of over 65.5 million and the futures years activity of 79.113 as per in Appendix 2. So the actual spend as of the 30th of September, excuse me, Chair, this year was just over 14 million. Appendix 1, you'll see the revisions to the capital programme, which is on page 79 to 81. Appendix 2, revised total capital programme, is in summary by the service, and that's on page 82 to 96. Happy to open this to debate. I welcome the last debate. It's very useful. It's worth also noting that we will be keeping a close eye and monitoring our capital programme for the very reasons that we've discussed in the previous report, Chair. So I'll hand over to Amanda if that's okay.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mike. Not to go through the figures in the sense Councillor Mike took you through those, but the only observation I would just want to make in addition is the fact that I think I've highlighted previously that I have some concern around the affordability of the capital programme as it currently stands, and that's especially the case given the increases in interest rates now, because obviously there's an exposure on the cost because of interest rate rises, and therefore really just to highlight the fact that I think we do need to prioritise the existing capital programme when set against the new capital business cases that will be coming through as part of this budget cycle, because I think we need to contain the overall sort of commitment within a reasonable level because of that affordability issue. So members will recall that normally we go through a process of scoring business cases for capital. So it would be my intention that we also bring back to the table the existing capital spend that hasn't yet taken place or has been committed, to set that alongside the new capital bids to reprioritise and consider the affordability issue, and also to consider that point I made a minute ago in terms of revenue, to consider actually the prioritisation, because it may well be that by now we might want to focus much more of our effort, for argument's sake, towards looked after children provision or towards homelessness provision, and that therefore may mean a bit of a switch in terms of our prioritisation. So just to also draw that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Open it up to debate. I've got Councillor Chris to start with, please. Councillor Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Amanda, my question is, we heard recently in the Chancellor's budget and from Welsh Government that their capital budget for Wales is being cut quite drastically over the next couple of years. And I'm conscious of the fact that some of our capital programme is designed for, is spread over 2 or 3 years. So will it have any impact then, or is it too short, too soon to actually recognise what impact it will have?
Thank you, Councillor Chris. Don't know the exact details, certainly, but as you say, the overall capital budgets have been reduced. So I would anticipate that the allocation we get for capital for next year would be less than we had the previous year. Bear in mind, actually, for 22-23, we only actually had a capital program of around 6 million. So just to explain what that means, effectively, we get a capital allocation which is made up of a percentage of capital grant and also then an amount of money whereby they've built into the settlement the borrowing costs relating to it. So I think last year, Hugh, my colleague here, will correct me if I'm wrong. He'll be hoping I'm not wrong. Sorry, apologies. 6 million, 6 million roughly was our allocation last year. I think about 2 million of it was capital grant. Yeah, and 4 million of it was the support through the settlement for borrowing, and that's, we sometimes refer to supported borrowing and unsupported borrowing. So the supported borrowing is the little bit that we get through the capital allocation and supported through the settlement. So yes, so to the extent we had 6 million last year, I would anticipate that would be less this year. So that effectively gives us a very small headroom to add more onto the capital program. I think the area, though, where we may also find is we have currently plans in place. We have expectations, not in our capital program yet, but there are expectations around the 21st century schools. I apologies, I think they've renamed that, so I'm not calling it the correct thing now, but we might find that allocation might be less in the future. We've also got significant allocations around Crump. Maybe that might get cut. I don't know. So yeah, the devil will be in the detail as the settlement and associated information is released. But certainly, I think we can see a contraction in the level of external support that we get for capital activity.
Thank you very much, Amanda. We'll go to Councillor Gareth next and Councillor Paul.
Given the situation we're in, should we not just put a stop on all the capital expenditure unless it's actually covered by grants and fully covered by grants, unless there's a clear case that there's a revenue gain from it? Should we just not halt everything and take a deep intake of breath and view it from the small stuff? I noticed, a small amount there in for a pilot exercise for unadopted roads. So I cannot possibly see how taking on more unadopted roads can actually help our revenue situation. To the remodelling of Porthairias, there's moving the depot at Plas-and-Dre down at Llanrwst. Well, fine. If there's a revenue gain to be had from moving down into the depot in Llanrwst, then that goes ahead. But if it is just, maintenance, or we're doing it because we've looked into it and there's no clear gain on revenue, then it should be put on hold to be looked at properly again.
Yeah, Councillor Gareth, I completely agree with you that I think that effectively is what I'm talking about. I mean, obviously, we have made a number of contractual commitments through our capital programme so far, and obviously we have no choice but to proceed with those. But absolutely, that's what I was outlining, really, that effectively anything we've not yet contractually committed as part of the direction that was approved by Cabinet last week around pausing spend and activity that wasn't just directed at revenue, that also was directed at capital schemes. So within that, one of the remedial measures was about not starting new capital schemes without authority. And so, yeah, I think very much so we need to bring back onto the table all the schemes we've approved, look at what new is coming through, and actually, as you say, look at what is now the priority. And I would argue that what is now the priority is those capital schemes that will drive down our revenue pressures. And therefore, that's really what we need to direct capital towards. And some of the other stuff, whilst it's all very laudable and positive, I think we potentially need to just put on hold pending better days in the future.
Thank you, Amanda. Councillor Gareth, you content? Yeah. Okay. We come to Councillor Paul, and I'd like members to think if we have any recommendations to make to Cabinet from this, if you begin thinking about that now. Thank you. Councillor Paul.
If I could ask a specific question, but it rather builds on what Gareth has just said. On page 87, there is information about the primary schools modernisation band B capital refurbishment, and it deals with a number of matters, and I'm sure ward councillors in respect of where those schools are will also be interested in this. I'm specifically interested in the Abergele situation, which, as I understand at the moment, as people may know, we were due to have a new primary school in Abergele. That has been delayed and delayed and delayed, and the last correspondence I had with Larry about that was that September 26 is the earliest sort of possible start of that scheme, both because of Welsh Government and because of our own complications. I did write to John Davis about this because it's a relatively small amount of money, but in terms of the work that needs to do, even for September 26, some work needs still to be done. And I'm sure that's true, May, of some of the other schemes. And it does greatly impact, again, on the issue that Mike was raising, staff morale, because staff in this school for a number of years now have been hoping to move into a brand new school. And I think in one or two cases that's maybe enabled us to keep some staff on board, you know what I mean? Otherwise they may have gone somewhere else. And so, though it's a relatively small sum of money, if that money is coming straight from Welsh Government, I'm assuming we will continue to work up these projects. This project may not further delay from September 2026, but the question I'm asking is, if we've got the funding from Welsh Government, will we still pursue, whether it's design contracts or whatever, during this period?
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Who wants to get that? Councillor Julie, do you want to get that?
Thank you. So the Social Care and Education Capital Programme Board will be meeting tomorrow, and I think we'll begin to discuss where we move forward with this. I think it's too difficult to clarify exactly what the situation is currently. What we have done is written to all schools that were in Band B just to make them aware, or that letter's going out. It's either gone out the end of last week or it's going out early this week, just to make them aware that we are assessing the situation, because obviously in terms of, we had 9 areas originally in the Band B project with an estimated cost of around 44 million. That's doubled already before we've even then added in the interest rate rises, a number of other different things. So we're aware, and we've notified schools that we need to look at that and look at how we prioritise that moving forward. But yeah, that board will meet tomorrow, and I can always update you after that, Paul. Thanks,
Thanks, Councillor Julie. You, Anna, didn't know, because Jane was going to respond to one item, but she's had to leave.
I have many skills. Mind reading, not one of them, so Rachel.
Fine. You disappoint, you really do. Okay. He's a Wales fan, of course he knows. Right, next, Councillor Dilwyn, please.
Yes, I just want some clarification here, Chair. Sgysio cyn fi bleidleisio ar ddim byd wan o be di'r argymellion, cyn pleidleisio ar be di'r argymellion I Cabinet wan. Dwi just yn mynd yn ôl wan I be oedd Gareth yn godi, Cynori Gareth yn gynt, ac dwi'n gweld union lle mae Gareth yn dod o, dwi'n mynd anghyd fel fo, ond fysa gynna I ddim isio cael yr eochrwydd ar yn meddwl bod fi yn pleidleisio eto I prosiect yn Plas yn Dre, beidio mynd ymlaen, achos mae gynna I, dwi eisiau cael mwy o wybodaeth am hwn, mae gynna I bryderon mawr am y sgîm yma, mae ar y gweill ers blynyddoedd lawer. Ges I yn argyhoeddi gyn swyddogion yn 2017 bod hwn yn mynd ymlaen adeg hynny, ac bod pethau yn barod I fynd ymlaen hefo i'r adran gynllunio, ond does na ddim byd wedi mynd yn ei flaen, ac mae gen i isio gofyn y cwestiwn yna, pam bod o heb, ac dwi jyst isio eglurdeb ar hyn wan, os ydw i'n pleidleisio yn fama wan i rargymellion yna, bod hwnna rhan o'r rargymellion yn y cabinet, mi faswn i'n bach yn bryderus ar y sgîm yna.
Thank you, Councillor Dilwyn. Councillor Gromley, do you want to come back on that? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure what you're looking for from these recommendations, but certainly the budget group will be going through all this information that we have in front of us to clean down where we prioritise, and everybody will have their pet project, or there'll be NIMBYism coming into this, and I dare say I'll have the same views about certain schemes in my area, but I'm aware we need to look at all these in the round, and they will be considered by the budget working group and then by the capital bids working group, and it'll be based on facts, so we can't single out one, whether it be 21st century schools or any other project, because we will just start the whole thing. Well, I want this in my ward and it's got to go ahead. We need to look at all the figures in the round and then come to a democratically decided way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Gromley, and that will involve the results of the budget working group coming back to this committee, I'm sure. Yeah, yes, thank you. It certainly does. Okay, we've now got.
Can I just come back on that? I appreciate what Councillor Conway is saying, but can I assure him that it wasn't an NIMBY point that I was making, because it's not actually in my ward, but I'm very concerned about it, knowing what has happened previously. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dilwyn. I don't think Councillor Gromway meant NIMBYism as we all see it. I think it was just a choice of words. Okay, Councillor Nigel next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I would like to move the recommendations, but I would like to Cabinet to note that I think it's imperative that we take advantage of all the funding schemes that are on offer to allow these projects to come forward, in particular the CRIMP funding, which is 85%, and previously that's only been 50%. So I wouldn't want us to lose that opportunity of that additional cash from Welsh Government if it's on the table. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. I think that the question in the budget working groups is going to be whether we can put our part of the finance into any of these schemes. That's, I can see Councillor Mike nodding. I think that's the dilemma we're going to have all around. Councillor.
No, I'd just like to second Councillor Nigel's specific point about the CRUMP funding, because I think it would be a complete nonsense to lose that 85% funding. Specifically, again, I don't think it's NIMBYism or anything, because it doesn't, I haven't got CRUMP funding anymore in my area. But I can't believe we're not going to build the sea defences at Toward and Kimmel Bay, because that would be a complete nonsense not to do that. So I would second Councillor Nigel's proposal on that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mike and Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, of course we'll look at, we're not going to throw everything away and say we're stopping doing everything. I think each business case will be taken on their merits. Some business cases might be saving in the future. It could be a project where it'll alleviate some pressures on housing, for example. I'm a big, we need our children out of county, back home, back into Conway, and a project could secure that aim and goal. So I think, as you say, if there's significant risk in the coast, I think we need to take that on board as well. But obviously we have to look at the revenue spend as well in the situation we're in.
Thanks, Councillor Mike. Councillor Gareth.
I was just going to agree with what Mike was saying there. Just because there's an 85% grant for something doesn't mean it's a good idea to go ahead with it. We should be actually making informed decisions on every project that we do. And, basically my if you like, my proposal would be along what I've said at the beginning, is that we halt every bit of a capital expenditure unless we're contractually obliged to do it, unless it is essential repairs and maintenance, or unless there are definite benefits, revenue benefits to doing it, and we halt that until we've actually had time to look at each scheme individually and make informed decisions on it.
Is that a proposal then?
I think that would be my proposal.
Thank you very much. Before I go for a second, Amanda wanted to come back.
Can I just wanted to highlight, it is alluded to in the report, but just to specifically highlight a slight concern I have about Crump while we're talking about Crump, in the sense of whilst the 85% funding comes from Welsh Government, it's the format of that funding is a little bit different than normal in the sense of it's not a grant. What it is that they will give us in the settlement the funding to meet the borrowing costs. So it's not that we only have to, so we will have to do the 100% of the borrowing, but they will give us 85% of the implication of that. My slight nervousness is now, given changes in interest rates, whether the amount we're going to be given is going to also cover the increase in interest rates, because when the Crump schemes were put in place, I am just marginally concerned, and I might be wrong, so I might be I might be highlighting something that's not right, but I'm a little bit concerned that the amounts secured will have been based at the point when those applications were made, not now. So I'm a little bit concerned that we have some increased exposure to the interest costs of that. So I think it, whilst obviously the scheme and the merits of the scheme can be rightly considered through the democratic process, it does go back to Councillor Garrett's point, I guess, really, which is just because we're getting a high level of funding doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right decision. So I just wanted to flag that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So if we've got no more speakers, we've just had Councillor Garrett's proposal. Does anyone wish to second that? No, we have no seconders for that. Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you. For those that couldn't hear, Johan, could you just pop your mic on?
Yes,
there,
sorry. I was just saying to Councillor Gareth that is actually happening in practice now, in terms of not committing to any new capital expenditure that isn't already contractually committed to, etc. So that's already in place basically this year, and then there will be the review of existing schemes alongside any potential new schemes in December.
Thanks very much for that, Johan. Steve, sorry, getting crick in my neck looking at the screen.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to know what the impact of not doing anything in regards to the coastal defences in Abergele and Pensarn. What kind of financial impact would that have if it was flooded?
And I'm sure that's what would be discussed when we assess each business case, Chair.
It's not Abergele and Pensarn anymore. It's only Tower, and we've already lost our sea defences. So, that's reality.
Okay, thank you for that. Reid, would you just like to recap on the proposals and how we're going to take this?
So we have Councillor Nigel has proposed the recommendations, which I presume are 2.1 and 2.2 and 2.3. But wanted to add specific wording as well. Now, I would suggest that we take those specific wording first, because obviously we don't want everything to pass or fail in that respect. So we'll take those individual words first, Nigel, and if you could just reiterate what they were, so that we can then take a vote on that one first, and then we'll take the rest of the recommendations.
Well, from my understanding from officers, previously funding for sea defence schemes was 50%. With the crimp funding, it's 85%, although as Amanda says, they'll only pay the cost of the 85%, which for me is pretty much the same. And I think it's important that we capitalise on as much grant funding as we can. So that's my recommendation to Cabinet. Just to give you an idea, the Towing floods that happened cost over £100 million. And we don't want that to happen in the future. There are thousands of houses on that coastal strip, hundreds of businesses, and it's the tourist mecca of Conway. 55,000 tourist beds in Towyn alone, all at risk of flooding. And if we can get grant funding to protect those properties, and it may be NIMBYism or whatever, but we need to capitalise on that, as we will in Llandudno and Penryn Bay, because we got to protect our coastal areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. And that was what you seconded, Councillor Paul. Johan, would you like to?
Can I suggest that that's captured in a more general resolution rather than just relating to Crump? And I think what that would be is that future capital schemes are the gearing of funding for future capital schemes is taken into account. And by gearing, I mean the amount of other people's money we get versus the amount of our own money. Now, in practice, I think that happens in any case. It's something we would do, but if it satisfies Councillor Nigel's suggestion, because I think the same principle must apply. Well, should I think apply to all capital schemes, not just the Crump ones or one.
Yes, we face, thank you very much, Johan. We face so many competing demands, things that are statutory and things that are life-threatening, i.e. the Crump funding. Councillor Nigel, are you happy with the suggestion?
I'm very happy with that, and I think it's
Very
something that
happy.
we're already doing anyway. You know, if somebody's going to offer us a large incentive to do whatever, then we would be silly not to explore that investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nigel. Councillor Paul, were you happy to second that proposal by not Councillor Ewan? So, okay, well, that's simplified things somewhat. So we're now going to, we're voting on the recommendations with that addition.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, if members would all like to show on that, please. 1, 2. We have 11 for, and have we got anybody against, please? No. Have we got any abstentions? Councillor Gareth. Thank you very much. Well, that is passed. Thank you very much, members, and I'm sure Cabinet members will have taken great note of everything we've discussed today. We now move on to on the home straight now, look at that, only 12:15. We now move on to item 8C, council tax premiums on long-term empty homes and second homes, pages 97 to 181. And those who've recorded a declaration of interest will leave. We've had leaving in the chamber. Anyone currently on Zoom that needs to leave because of Councillor Tristan? Is he gone now? We sure? Yeah. Anybody else record? Sean? Yes, she's gone as well. Okay, that's marvellous. Well, this is going to be introduced by Councillor Mike and supported by Amanda and Supla. Thank you.
Yeah, again, thank you, Chair. And can I make a comment on your chairing skills at a very difficult meeting? Really complex issues we're discussing, and you're doing really well. So thank you for that. That said, I don't want to put Councillor Andrew Wood on the spot, but I know he chaired the Affordable Housing and Council Tax Premium Working Group. They met on the 21st of October to discuss council tax premiums on long-term and empty homes and second homes. So as I say, they met. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend. I was on holiday. The recommendations in this report are on paragraphs 2.2 to 2.4. As I say, you've got strategic director here. I'm sure will explain all the implications around making or accepting the recommendations, which I endorse at this time. There's a lot to be explained regarding that. It's also worth noting that we consulted regarding this. We opened up our consultation on the 24th of August, and that closed on the 3rd of October. And we had 801 responses. You can find out that in the minutes of the working group, and that's on page 105. And the consultations, the information regarding the consultation is on around about page 111 onwards. So really, I'll just open it up for yourselves, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mike, for introducing that. Well, I'd like to bring in Councillor Andrew Wood as the chair of the working group for his comments, please, and then we'll go to a debate. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mike. Quite simply, actually, the working group's done a great job, but also the previous working group in 2021 did a really good job, and both working groups came to the same conclusion that the uplift should be 50% for second homes and 50% for long-term empty. This was influenced very much so by the rural members, Ivor and Tristan and Nia, who rightfully so commented on the impact in schools and local towns, villages where this second home and long-term empty was a problem. So I'm quite happy to endorse that one, and also the later recommendation that we should look to move to 100% and 100% next year. There's 100 pages of really interesting report if everybody goes right the way through it. It's not just the working group, but it's you know, where Welsh government papers and all sorts of information in there. There's not much for me to add in there, except that some of the tables are a bit old-fashioned. They're not exactly great. But if I take it to people, a lot of people say, oh, people will leave the system, the council tax system, and go into business rates, and then sort of cheaters of our council tax. Some of them already have anyway. In the last 3 years, if you look at it, Airbnb and things like that have got prolific. So some have. But if you actually work out what we've lost, taking 50% of the transferees, we've lost around about £460,000. But over the last 3 years, with the uplift that we've actually put into our housing allocation, affordable housing allocation, is around about between 1.6 and 1.8 million. So we're definitely on the right side. I'm looking forward. I've already made a date with Amanda and Sam Parry for next year to really drill down on these figures and bring some really meaningful figures back for next year. I feel that some of the figures are a bit ambiguous, to say the least. But apart from that, I've got no other things to mention, except I would like to propose that the recommendations from 2122, 2324, which Mike's just mentioned, that we endorse and take it forward. Thank you. Open to questions, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew, for that. First question, Councillor Paul and Councillor Stephen.
I realise everybody wants to finish this meeting, but I just want to highlight one particular aspect. I was on the working group, and I think Andrew will admit, I found it really challenging getting my head around all of this. I read all the papers, and I had to leave the working group after an hour and a half because I had to do a family commitment. So it's complex, and there are lots of issues, and we tried our best for the first 90 minutes I was there. I don't know how long it did go on for, but I was quite glad to leave in one sense, because it was very challenging, mind thinking. I have only had one letter about this issue to me, and I think all councillors got the same letter from a gentleman called Aled Owen, who has a house in Penmacno. So I had no brief for him at all, but I think he did raise, and I know I can see Rin frowning at me, so I'll be careful. He did raise some very important points, I think, about how we sustain you know, valleys like Penmacno, Penmacno, a valley I love. I walk there, and I'm very conscious in Erie that there are valleys and there are areas with derelict villages. I remember my daughter doing a art project of it, and I drove around and we clambered up the hills and we took photographs of these derelict villages. And basically, this gentleman is stressing, and I suspect you won't agree to me reading out two paragraphs of his letter, but I think he does make, even in his second letter, a valid point. And I'd like to hear again both the information and the arguments from the ward councillors, whether it's for Penmacno or others, because I think those issues do need to be addressed in this forum about, are we putting in at risk these communities like Penmacno, where there's no work or very little work apart from farming work in that valley. And there are many issues about how we sustain a community like that.
Chair, can I just come in there, please? Just quickly, as chair.
Go on then, I'm indulging you.
That's very kind of you. But as Councillor Nia and other rural members mentioned, if you were there at the whole meeting, Paul, and I've done a couple of years of this, at least 2 or 3 years. I know Chris Hughes has and other members have. So there's a big background to this. But we've gone softly, 25, 50, and we're ramping up because we're listening to local members. I listen to Nia, I listen to Ivor, it's in the report, and this is what we're doing. And we're looking at the other table. If you look at another table of what the rest of the councils doing in and around Wales, we are banged on with them. So at 50-50 we are, but we have listened. And Nia will actually tell you she actually steered it and gave us a recommendation. And I'm quite happy to listen to all members and form that opinion and just take it forwards. Because again, I reiterate, 2021 we decided this, and 2022 last month we decided it. So
thank you. Thanks, Councillor Andrew, for that.
Thank you.
We'll hear from the rural members. Next, I've got Councillor Stephen in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second Councillor Wood's proposal, but I do have some concerns on non-domestic rates, and I'm hoping Welsh Government will pursue and encourage any further work on non-domestic rates.
That's a definite risk, isn't it? Yeah, thank you. So you're seconding, that's great. Now, Councillor Chris, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think, like Councillor Paul said at the beginning, it is a difficult subject to get your head around. I've been on this committee now, on this working group for 6 years, and it certainly took me a couple of years to get into the detail of it. And I think it's taken us longer to actually get to the stage where we're now getting facts and figures and data and information that is more meaningful, that actually allows us to make more confident decisions, I'll say. And I think, we have had the cautious approach, largely driven by the risk of people flipping and things like that to an NDR. But we're assured that there are Welsh Government are introducing policies now that will seek to address that. And in fact, when people apply to shift to flip their property, they will have to actually provide a significant amount of evidence to show that their flipping isn't just to save the rate, but it is a genuine property that is genuinely being marketed and has genuinely been let for a guarantee for a period of time to do that. So that's what's giving us more confidence in terms of doing this, because ultimately the answer for many people is that we don't have the housing in Conway to provide accommodation, which is why we've got such a huge problem in terms of temporary accommodation, and we've got a lot of a problem in terms of our rural communities because of the prices going up and up and up. And that's what's causing some of the dereliction in some respects, because people are moving out of those communities because there simply isn't the affordable housing in those communities and then once that happens, the businesses, the small corner shops start to disappear. And then people think, well, is this the right place for me? Because I can't even pop down the road to the corner shop. So I think there's an element of concern, but I think from the reports that we've read, from the evidence that we've been given and the information we've been provided with, I think it's true to say that that cautious approach that we've taken over the years has been the right thing to do, which is evidenced in the fact that we now have around about £1.6 million a year extra going into the housing programme as a consequence of this. But I think also that legislation that's coming through gives us a degree of confidence that we can actually move forward on this without it negatively impacting our revenue base.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Chris. Thank you. So we've got Councillors Gromway, Gareth, Dilwyn.
Thank you for letting me speak, Madam Chairman. This has been a difficult one, and I've been involved in obviously for a great many years, and having held the different portfolios and also having held the housing portfolio. It is a balancing act, and it's about trying to move things forward in the best interest of the residents of Conway, whilst appreciating the fact that people that have second homes here have possibly contributed to our economy over the years. But taking the point that Paul made, there are more reasons than just the fact that the work has dried up in Machno. That is changing now with the rollout of fibre and connectivity. Many of these properties now are being more attractive to people to actually work from home and stay in their own locality, which I think will have a difference over the years. But I've seen, I've got little villages in my ward, I think of Rowan, where most of the properties are more in the price range of multimillionaires than they are in local residents. So the thing I think, we've been very careful in the approach we've taken. We have to balance the risk of people, as you said, flipping, and then we lose the council tax. But the time has come now where the demand for housing is so great in Conway, we have to take appropriate action to make sure that we can bring empty homes back into serviceable accommodation. And also that if people in the privileged position of having second homes can no longer afford that increase, well, we all have to make difficult decisions. So I think it's appropriate that we take it up to 50% at this current time, and quite possibly even higher if we have to do in coming years.
Thank you, Councillor Gromway. Councillor Gareth, please.
Yeah, my only thought was that, as we get the data and get the information through, are we allowed then to actually have different premiums in different areas? Because we're a very diverse county. And, once we see what effect this has, are we able to target particular hotspots that we want to possibly increase it and other areas that we want to decrease it, so that we can actually try and influence the effects of it?
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, very, very interesting thought. To tell the truth, I'd have to look into the legislation to see whether we've got that. I know certainly one of the things that was discussed at the working group, which I know I've discussed with Suplam, our taxation manager, is around whether, you could, for instance, I think at some other authorities in England, have a policy whereby, with an empty home, say it's X%, for 1 year. If it's still empty after 2 years, it goes up, and if after 3 years it goes up, etc. And so certainly I think that type of rule is within the legislation. I'm less cited on whether different wards we could apply different rules, so I'll have to confirm that in due course. The only thing I would observe though is we need to be slightly careful that we don't make something so complex that it's administratively difficult to actually practically administer, but yes, certainly I can look into that.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, don't go to loads of work. It's only just a thought, and it's not for now, it's for future years going forward.
Absolutely.
We could possibly use it to actually fine tune and influence, have the positive influences we want to have on our communities, rather than a one size fits all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as you say, there's no immediate rush in the sense we can't apply it for next year anyway. It would be for the future. So, but I'll make sure we know that answer and have, if it is feasible, have proposals that can be considered by the Affordable Housing Working Group next year. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Amanda, because we have to do everything we can to support our rural communities, and that if there was the option to do that, that would probably be a very effective way of doing it. Reen.
Yeah, just very quickly.
Reen's just giving us some advice here, Dilwyn.
Just very
before
quickly.
you come in.
Just very quickly. Yes, the hyperlocal issue is something that is recognised really in the proposed changes to the planning legislation about second homes. So that it's an Article 4 direction, which sort of coincides with what you're saying about this. However, there are risks involved there in terms of moving the problem then to somewhere else. So there's always another side to this argument. Unfortunately, it's a very complicated area. So yeah, but it's certainly something that we could look at.
Thank you very much, Reen. We've got councillors Dilwyn and Nia, then we're going to go to the vote. Thank you.
There we are. Is it me first?
It is.
Oh, there we are. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Dwi isio jyst sôn os bod o diw cyrbwys yn gynharach gyn Cynghorydd Paul am Cwm Machno. Yndi, mae'r broblem yn enfawr yn fanno, fi di'r cynghorydd lleol yn fanno wan, a mae o'n beth sydd yn gwaethygu. Mae'r gymuned wedi newid yn gyfan gwbl yn Cwm Machno yn yr hanner can mlynedd dwytha yma, ond hynny, mae'n gymuned dda yna. Ac be dwi wedi bod yn glywed hefyd ydy bobl sydd wedi symud o tu allan i'r ardal i Cwm Machno wrach yn yr 10 mlynedd dwytha, wedi dod yna yn gyple ifanc, wedi magu teulu yna, a'i plant wedi bod yn yr ysgol yn lleol a hyn a llall. Y plant wan isio aros, i plant nhw bellach, isio aros yn Cwm Machno, ond oherwydd bod bobl yn dod yna a prynu'r tai yma fel ail dai, o felly maen nhw'n methu gwneud hynny. Ac mae yna beryg mawr i'r gymuned yna i eto. Be faswn ni yn awgrymu sydd yn bwysig i ni wneud ydy cadw llygad hefyd ar beth sy'n digwydd yng Ngwynedd. Ac mae o'n bwysig bod ni yn codi y trethi yma i fyny, a dwi'n falch iawn o'r gwaith sydd wedi cael ei wneud yn y grŵp tasgogoffen yma. Ond mae gennai os nag ydyn ni yn gwneud hynny, y bydd y broblem yn symud o Gwynedd tuag at Gonwy, ac byddwn ni yn y blynyddoedd, mae o'n cael ei ddeud wan ydy'r broblem i'm yn fawr mewn rhai ardaloedd yn Gonwy, ond mae yna broblem y bydd mae yna bosib y bydd o'n mynd lot gwaith yn y blynyddoedd nesaf os na nawn ni godi y trethi mewn sylweddol.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dilwyn. So you now cover Machno. Well, you have a great football team to go and support every Saturday then. I hope I hope you paid attention to that. Fearsome opponents they are. Yeah. So last speaker will come to Councillor Nia and then we'll go to the vote. Thank you.
Diolch pawb. Swn i'n hoffi dechrau trwy ddiolch i bawb am ddangos eu cefnogaeth i hyn bydd yr ardaloedd gwledig yng Nghonwy, achos dwi'n deall yn iawn dydy'r broblem ddim yn broblem mor fawr yn y ardaloedd y gogledd. Dim ond i roi chydig bach o gefndir i chi. Ar hyn o bryd, ym Machno ei hun, mae 37% o'r tai yno yn ail dai. Dwi'n meddwl yn Dolwydd Elan, mae tua 48% o'r tai yno yn ail dai, a dwi'n meddwl yng Nghapel Curig mae bron i 60% yn ail dai yn fanno. Felly mae'r ail dai yma yn amlwg yn cael effaith enfawr ar ein cymunedau gwledig ni. Mae'n cael effaith ar yr iaith Gymraeg, mae'n cael effaith ar y diwylliant, mae o'n bendant yn cael effaith ar yr ysgolion cynradd lleol hefyd. A dwi ddim yn derbyn y ffaith bod ni'n gwneud drwg i'r economi drwy leihau faint o ail dai, achos ar ddiwedd y dydd, os oes rhywun yn byw llawn amser mewn tŷ, maen nhw'n mynd i gyfrannu tuag at yr economi bob dydd o'r flwyddyn yn dydyn, yn wahanol i'r ychydig wythnosa mae pobl yn dod i'w hael tai felly. Ond diolch yn fawr iawn am ddangos cefnogaeth a hoffwn ni, os nad oes 'na rywun wedi gwneud yn barod, eilio cynnig Andrew os gwelwch yn dda. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nia. So if we've got no other speakers anywhere, if we'd like to move to the recommendations, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4. Yep, if we'd like to show hands on this, please. Nine. Yeah, 9. That's 9-4. Have we got anyone against? Any abstentions? No. Okay, that is passed then. Well, thank you very much indeed, members. Now, before you go, I just a quick word. I think that this is the last F&R that we will have before it's your last Monday morning, isn't it, you, Anne? Yes, as you proudly said. No. Amanda said, get rid of chief executives. This is where we're going. No, I'd just like to thank you on behalf of this committee and the council for the long and dedicated service you've given to Conway and everything you've done over the years. You'll be very much missed, and I'm sure the members here join in thanking you for everything you've done. So thank you very much, Joanne. Okay, everybody, you're free to go and you have 20 minutes.
Thanks, Cheryl. Well chaired. Thank you very much, Cheryl. Take care.
Recording stopped.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.